War. War never changes.
War has changed.
Will you people make up your minds already?
War. In the real world, it freaking sucks. People die, many of them innocent, landscapes are ravaged, the environment suffers, and arms profiteers see their coffers stuffed. At least fictional military conflict makes for entertaining media to consume. War movies, cartoons about super soldiers, anime that only serves to highlight how much war sucks. Wait. And video games love to glorify the stereotype of the superior soldier. Call of Duty manages to survive annual releases for some reason. We have a space marine who's so badass that hell's afraid of him, and a guy who single-handedly mows down legions of Nazis because fuck Nazis. And this glorification of war is nothing new, because when a story involves some psycho general or an alien force bent on enslaving our race, how are we gonna stop them? By talking to them? Non-violent protest? Nah, this is video games. We just send in the biggest freedom-loving, gun-toting buff dudes and dudettes we have on our payroll. Because Michael Bay. Also, a tank can't hurt. Which brings us to our series of choice this month, Metal Slug. A run-and-gun franchise in the vein of Contra, only a lot more cartoony in its art style and almost comical in its violence. This franchise has been a mainstay in SNK's history, though more recently it's been relegated to mobile tower defense. Though word is a proper Metal Slug game may be in development. So let's take a look at the history of Metal Slug and what made this series such a hit.
Yo, Joe!
The first game in the series, Metal Slug Super Vehicle 001, was released in arcades in 1996, developed by a group called Nazca Corporation, which would be acquired by SNK later that year following the game's success. The people there must really like geoglyphs, I guess. The basic idea is that this madman named General Morden, who looks a little bit like Saddam Hussein, is launching a major military offensive in an effort to create a new world order, and has gotten his hands on a new tank called the Metal Slug. Title drop! In order to stop him, two elite soldiers from the Peregrine Falcon strike team, Marco Rossi, aka the dude on the left, and Tarma Roving, aka the dude on the right, are deployed with a mission, to take back the tech and take Morden down. So, two soldiers against an army consisting of, only about 20,000 enemy troops. I almost feel sorry for the cartoon villain. The first thing you see is how comically the enemy soldiers are portrayed. The first one you see screams in terror at your approach. You'll often find them chatting it up, or sunbathing, or roasting weenies. So, are they roasting each other? As far as controls, being a run-and-gun, they're simple. Attack, jump, and a limited number of grenades. I say attack instead of shoot because... Marco, let me see what you have. A knife. No! Actually, that works well in close range. Never mind, carry on. Now, your main sidearm works well enough, but, well, given that this is an arcade run-and-gun, power-ups are part of the package. You know, kinda like Contra. There are all sorts of weapons you can obtain, like a heavy machine gun and a rocket launcher. And the announcer's voice as you grab these items is meme-worthy.
Heavy machine gun, shotgun, rocket launcher.
Now, unlike Contra, where you keep the power-up you have until you die, you only have a limited amount of ammo before you have to go back to your pistol. But let's not forget the big thing that separates this game from stuff like Contra. Tanks. Big ones. This is the eponymous Metal Slug, and whenever you see one, it's in your best interest to get your ass into that thing. It's perfect for blasting troops, blowing up enemy structures, and just cruising down the highway. It's equipped with a rotating gun that can fire in multiple directions, a cannon that can do massive damage at the cost of limited shots, and it can take a few hits before you're forced to eject under threat of death, while one hit kills you when you're on foot. Of course, you're a big target in that big tank, and not quite as mobile, given that tanks can't jump. Wow, no wonder Morden wanted this thing so badly. Another staple of the Metal Slug series that was established from the first game is rescuing POWs. Remember those Reploids from Mega Man X5? Yeah, same idea. Rescue the POWs, which by the way look like they spent the last 3 years on a deserted island, and they'll give you stuff from behind a hammer's face curtain. You also get a bonus for each one you've rescued by the end of the stage, and they even have their own names despite looking exactly the same as one another. Of course, it also gives you incentive to play carefully, because when you die, you lose credit for all the POWs you've rescued to that point. And dying is likely to happen a lot, considering that this is a run-and-gun, and run-and-guns are hard. And, well, there's a reason to justify it being hard. The first game is also really short. A total of 6 missions take Marco and Tarma through a jungle, across the marina, into the mountains, through war-torn cities, and straight into Morton's stronghold. All while military march music is playing throughout the mission. And another thing I really like is the sprite work in this series. The characters are all well animated and very expressive, right down to the most humble mook. That's a part of what gives the series its charm. And that continues into Metal Slug 2, which was released in 1998. Picking up some time after the events of the first game, factions who are loyal to Morden, who was presumed killed in the first game, have begun to collaborate, leading the regular army to suspect that Morden is somehow still alive. Once again, Marco and Tarma are called into action, now joined by 2 new allies, Eri Kasamoto and Fio Jermi, aka Best Girl. Their mission takes them through the desert and the ruins that come with it, onto the enemy supply train, that doesn't look reminiscent of anything, through a couple of war-torn cities, and into Morton's Arctic base, where it's revealed that he's had some help. Now, I won't say that it was aliens, but it was fucking aliens. And they join Morton's mooks until you reach him, when the Mars people turn on him and abduct him. Because of course. The final battle is basically Independence Day, with Morton's soldiers helping you fight the mothership because they want their fearless leader back. The destruction of the mothership even pays homage to that cheesy movie.
Hello, boys! I'm back!
See what I mean? Metal Slug 2 worked to build on what people liked about the original. For one thing, things get even more cartoony. Players can get transformed in weird ways, like getting turned into a mummy, or even getting morbidly fat from eating too much, only to lose all that weight after a while. That does not sound healthy. There's also some new toys to bring destructive joy, including a laser that can blast through multiple troops, and firebombs that are especially effective against mummies. There are also new vehicles to work with, including an armored frame, a jet fighter, and an armed camel. Because what better means of armed transport in the freaking desert, am I right? Now, there were a few issues with Metal Slug 2, including slowdown. And this was in the days before games could be updated with patches over the internets. So what was SNK supposed to do about it? Release an update, of course! Metal Slug X was the name of the update, released as its own game in 1999, fixing the slowdown and making the game more challenging. Other changes included a variety in the time of day missions took place, a new announcer, remixed music, stronger versions of sub-weapons, and new weapons including a bouncing drop shot and a guided drone called the Iron Lizard. Given the choice between this and the vanilla version of Metal Slug 2, you're definitely better off asking for the sundae with sprinkles. A year later, the next installment of the series, Metal Slug 3, was released in arcades. Picking up some time after Morton's previous attempted coup, Marco and company are recalled to deal with the remnants of the evil general's forces. As they deal with the enemy troops on a desert island, it soon becomes clear that Morton's followers are a little too coordinated. Meanwhile, a series of bizarre events including abductions of livestock, disappearances of government personnel, and weird creatures running amok leads the team to believe that Morton isn't the only threat to be worried about. After tracking the rebel forces to a missile launching site, our heroes confront Morton himself and take him down, only to discover all too late that it's actually a Mars person in disguise, the aliens are back, and that the real Morton has been abducted by the aliens. Again.
Give me a big, fat break!
And by too late, I mean your character is literally abducted themselves. Good thing we have 3 more waiting in the wings, am I right? So whichever character you got handed to you commandeers a missile, breaking into the mothership, where we find Morton being tortured, and we bust him out because we're a bunch of goody two-jackboots. Seriously, he's tried to take over the world twice. Can't we just, leave him in there? Fine. So we reach the core of the ship, confront the leader of the Martians and blow the shit out of it, blast through zombie clones of our ally before finding out where they're being held, save them, and get the hell out of the collapsing ship, only for the Martian leader to make one last attempt on our lives. After a fierce battle resulting in the leader's defeat, the heroes land in the water below. Safely, might I add. And, why are we just letting Morton get away like that? Whatever. Now, while maintaining the presentation style of the previous games, Metal Slug 3 does several things to further evolve the game. First of all, given that this game follows the natural progression of the series, the silliness went in harder, including more of the alien elements, and, more in terms of gameplay, there were a couple more transformations. For one, in the second mission, you could get turned into a zombie. Or, are we still calling them walkers? No, wait, that's the wrong series. Now as a zombie, not only are you immune to certain attacks, but you're able to vomit blood in a destructive sanguine geyser. Now that's what I call apocalyptic. There is another mission where you can get frozen solid, in which case you look like a snowman. Another instance of natural progression is the myriad of new vehicles you can pilot. These include a submarine, an elephant, yeah, we're going full Hannibal here, an ostrich, a commandeered enemy mech, a helicopter, a rocket, and a drill. Furthermore, some of the new vehicles lend themselves to new styles of gameplay, which carry over even if you lose them. But the biggest improvements to the game as I see it is in the level design. Several levels include branching paths, each with its own secrets, meaning you can have much more replay value. For instance, in the first mission, there's a point where you can go off the main path and find a sub-adventure underwater. You're still going from point A to point B, but now you have different ways to get there for a different experience. All of these improvements end up making Metal Slug 3 a lot more than the sum of its parts, and my personal pick for my favorite in the series. Unfortunately, it's also the last Metal Slug game SNK made before its temporary bankruptcy. This would result in Metal Slug 4 being developed by a different pair of studios. The bulk of the fourth game was developed by a Korean publisher called Mega Enterprise, and assisting them were the now defunct Noise Factory, who helped them with the music in the third game. The game was released in 2002, being published by Playmore, which was headed by Eiichi Kawasaki, who was SNK's founder. The plot picks up with a cyber-terrorist organization called Amadeus, okay, who are threatening to unleash a new computer virus called White Baby upon the world. White supremacy on a whole other level, folks! What's more, video evidence suggests that Amadeus is working with General Morden. So while Tarma and Eri start working on countermeasures to the virus, Marco and Theo, along with newcomers Trevor Spacey and Nadia Cassell, are deployed to take the fight to the Amadeus organization themselves. Tracking the terrorists through the city, into the forests and mountains, the heroes confront Morden in his tank. Unfortunately, Morden manages to escape, so our troopers track him through an amusement park, through an enemy cargo ship, and finally infiltrate the base of Amadeus, where it's revealed that they've been creating robot clones of Morden. The mastermind behind this is the Doctor, who unleashes the full force of his computer but is ultimately defeated. But not before getting in one last word. New features in this game include a new metal-based bonus system for additional points, a double machine gun weapon, and 4 new vehicles. However, it does feel a bit dialed back compared to previous games, particularly in the silliness factor, and comparing it to the previous games, I kinda miss it. Granted, there are still some silly moments in this one. The game is otherwise solid, shooting things is as satisfying as always, and the medal system does give you more incentive to rack up your score, and overall, it was clear that the devs knew what they were doing. The last entry on the Neo Geo, developed by Noise Factory and the newly rebranded SNK Playmore, would follow the next year. Aside from being the last entry on the Neo Geo, this is also currently the last entry in the series timeline. This time, Morden and his rebel army are nowhere to be found. Our enemies this time are a freaking cult. These hooded weirdos are called the Ptolemaic Army, and they've gotten their hands on files about the Metal Slug project. The squad is called in to track them down and get the data back, engaging the Ptolemaic Army in the jungle and seeing the fruits of their ill-gotten gains. Through a few cutscenes, we see that all is not what it seems with these guys. The soldiers deal with the cult through a jungle factory, a wrecked city, an underwater base, and the oil fields, eventually facing the enemy in a ravaged Osaka. It's here that the Ptolemaic Army's true objective is revealed. Summoning a giant demon. Armed with dark energy, a giant scythe, and a perfect presence for Halloween parties. Wow, this whole thing got dark. I'm not kidding here, this is honestly the darkest the Metal Slug series has gotten to date. Not only that, but a plethora of unused files seems to indicate that the game was unfinished and rushed to meet a release date. A lot of the character transformations were cut, along with the flame shot and the metal system from the previous game, but we were given a slide move to cover distance quickly. 3 new vehicles were also added, those being a walker, a car with a gun, and a squid-like mobile pod. That being said, all those aforementioned unused assets make me wonder what the game would have been like if everything had been included. Probably might have been one of the better games in the series. Even as it is, it's still good, though maybe not quite up to the level as the previous games. Now, while Metal Slug 5 would be the last game in the series for the Neo Geo, it would not be the last Metal Slug game to grace arcades. 2006 would see Metal Slug 6 released in arcades for the franchise's 10th anniversary. Other releases commemorating the occasion included a 3D entry exclusive to Japanese PS2s, and the Metal Slug Anthology later that year, which compiled the first 6 games on Wii and PS2. The game was developed on the Atomiswave hardware. Now that I think about it, SNK seemed to have a thing with the number 6 on the Atomiswave. Metal Slug 6, Samurai Showdown 6, 6 fighters in a KOF 11 match. Strangely enough, SNK decided to place this one after the events of Metal Slug 3. Seriously, SNK, can you make a linearly consistent timeline for 5 minutes? It's been some time since Morton's forces and the Mars people were last defeated, but reports of aliens and UFOs, along with reports of a force resembling Morton's army holed up in the mountains, gives the regular army reason enough to bring the squad back into action, along with 2 new allies that look familiar. Yeah, people who have played the King of Fighters series may recognize these guys right away. These are Ralph Jones and Clark Still, who first appeared in SNK's arcade classic Ikari Warriors, gained popularity in KOF, and are now allies of the Metal Slug Brigade. As the soldiers storm the site, it soon becomes clear that, yes, Morton's forces are back, and yes, he's teamed up with the Mars people again. Well, folks, start writing, this is the same plot we've seen before. Okay, that's different. Turns out while Morton's forces and the Mars people were retrieving the Martian leader from the bottom of the sea, they were attacked by the aliens' natural predators, canonically known as the Invaders. And they eat Mars people. So now Morton's caught with his pants down, there's a new enemy to deal with, and we're dealing with it because, again, goody two-jackboots. With a new objective, our heroes battle the invaders to the cities, and ultimately into their insidious nest, where the POWs are Mars people, one of your own gets mind-controlled by a parasite, and ultimately we blast the hell out of the invaders' leader. Wow, this really is turning into Contra. Until it plummets to its doom, and nearly takes your chosen soldier with it. And in a stunning twist of irony, the one who saves you is either the Martian leader, or Morton himself. But the twist early in the plot isn't the only new thing Metal Slug 6 brought to the table. Let's start with the fact that for the first time, the character you select actually has an effect on the gameplay. Each one has their own stats and a special attribute. Marco's pistol is stronger, Karma's better with slugs, Theo starts equipped with a heavy machine gun and can hold more ammo, Eri gets double grenades, Rolf is a melee specialist and can use the Vulcan Punch, and Clark can perform his Super Argentine Backbreaker. So you have a good reason to think about which character you use, and not simply, this character looks good, I'll pick them. Next change, and the first one you actually see, is a choice of Easy Mode, which gives you a heavy machine gun and double ammo, but unfortunately ends before the final stage. Other changes include a new weapon called the Zantetsu Sword, a combo system based on causing damage quickly, and the ability to hold 2 special weapons. There are also some new vehicles, including a donkey, and on one alternate path, the Martian leader. Consider it a case of enemy of my enemy. The series also brings back some of the weirdness and quirkiness of previous entries, though it takes it in another direction, like I said, a little more like Contra, ditching the transformations in the process for the first time since the first game. As it stands, I personally thought it was one of the better games in the series, though the final mission does drag on. Unfortunately, it's also the only one of the arcade games that isn't available through the Arcade Archive series. You'll either have to get it as part of the Metal Slug Anthology, or mod your PS2 and import a Japanese copy. I won't judge. Now that's the last of the arcade entries, but I will briefly touch on the one mainline Metal Slug game that wasn't released in arcades. That would be Metal Slug 7, released for the DS in 2008, and revised into Metal Slug XX in 2010 for the PSP, which got re-released for Xbox 360 and later PS4. It mainly keeps all the systems from 6, as well as a new weapon, some new vehicles, and a plot which takes place after Metal Slug 4, and involves Morton getting some help from the future. XX also included Leona as a DLC character for $1, a small price to pay to complete the Ikari team. Unfortunately, the only new things we've seen from the series as of late are mobile crap. But given that SNK has found success with bringing their old franchises in front of new generations of gamers, both through Arcade Archive's re-releases and through the success of KOF 14 and the new Samurai Showdown, I'd say it's only a matter of time before the squad is called back into action.
Thing is, there's a lot they could do with a new Metal Slug, but they honestly don't have to do all that much new. It's the kind of series where the foundation is solid enough that they could stick to it, introduce maybe 1 or 2 new features, and as long as the level design and boss fights are fun and challenging, they could get away with it and it would still be a great game. It's kind of like how the Mega Man series has lasted for so long with a foundation that has more or less been unchanged for all these years. They don't have to reinvent the wheel, they just have to make sure it's full of air, free of holes, and slapped with a fresh set of rims from time to time. I'm the Quarter Guy, and until next time, be the arcade is closed.
This is a public service announcement from your friends at the QG Disaster Preparedness Advisory Board. In the world of video games, disasters can happen at any time. Being prepared for these disasters will maximize your chance of survival. In the event of an impending disaster, be sure to find the location of the nearest safe house, put your head between your knees, and kiss your ass goodbye. Next time, Top 10 Disasters in Video Games! It's game time!